Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijama, and I thank you for joining me for another episode. If you've been listening lately, then you've heard me talk about stalking people on YouTube, one of whom is Starla Moore. And this week, my guest is Starla Moore. She runs the Handmade Alphas Society. She also has her Etsy shop, Art by Starla Moore. And I'm so excited to talk with her because she has so much stuff going on, so much good things that there's so many good things that she's working on for the Etsy community. So we're going to jump right into that. Starla, thank you so much for being my guest and welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you. Of course. I'm super excited, a little nervous, but first time podcast. So, but I'm pretty used to recording. I think that most of my community knows that.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, with all the YouTube you've done, I think podcasting is like a piece of cake compared to all that.
Oh yeah, I'm in my pajamas right now, no makeup. It's great. I actually prefer this. I wish that I could just do this all the time.
Okay, so before we jump right into it, can we just learn a little bit more about you? Can you tell us about yourself and just what your journey has been into this world of selling on Etsy and creating your own community, etc.?
Yeah, of course. So I started on Etsy back in 2012, and everyone kind of raves about my story. Most of my alphas they pretty much know what's going on with me. But for your guests, basically, I started Etsy in 2012 because my husband was in the Air Force at that time, and we were stationed in California, 3,000 miles away from home in Ohio. We had no friends. We had no one near us. And on top of all that, I was 19 years old with a newborn. And for anybody who knows military life, it is really, really hard to get a job when you are that military spouse, because you don't have that job retainability.
Right.
Everyone knows that at any second the rug could be pulled out from under you and you can't put in, your 2 weeks notice because your family is getting shipped off somewhere else. So my only options at that point were getting a minimum wage job that would cover just enough for me to put my newborn daughter in daycare with strangers. And to me, that was just no. I was actually a preschool teacher before my husband was in the military, and I knew that it wasn't the life that I wanted for my family, my daughter, or myself, because I wouldn't be accomplishing anything by simply making enough money to pay for the daycare. So instead, I decided that I was gonna try making some little crafts and selling them online, because I thought that was what all the cool people were doing. It was either, Mary Kay or Scentsy or make my own stuff. And in the beginning, I tried everything. I was a tattoo designer, which is actually why my business name is Art by Starla Moore, rather than something witty that has to do with skeleton key necklaces, which is now all I sell. And that did really well for a while, but it took a lot of time. So I decided to stray away from that, and I switched to different types of jewelry. I tried to make the hemp jewelry and the hippie jewelry, and none of it was really sticking. So eventually I transitioned to my skeleton key necklaces, and I started, actually seeing some sales from it. And I thought, wow, okay, this is what's sticking. So it really happened in just such a weird way. I feel like for the first 2 years, I was really lost. And then I found the amazing Renee Christine, who you just recently interviewed.
Yes.
What? That was like 2 weeks ago, a week ago?
I think it was, March 6th was when she was on the podcast, right before Handmade Titan University opened up.
Right. And that's closed now. Just like
It's
this
closed.
big disclaimer. I know that she just now closed that. But I did join Handmade Titan University. At that time, it was called Rich Mom University. And from there, I learned a whole lot, like so much. I cannot thank that amazing, beautiful, blonde-haired woman enough for everything that she did for my business and my family. So then, things took a really, really bad turn while we were still in California. My husband, he developed some really bad problems that kind of were associated with his job. He
Mm.
developed degenerative disc disease in his lower vertebrae, and they told him that getting a metal bar in his back was the only way to fix that. However, it would have to be removed and replaced within a few years. And my husband at that time was only 25 years old.
Mm.
So that didn't seem like a good option for us. And then on top of that, he developed a skin condition, which was from the stress of what he did for his job. And it basically ate the skin on his face. It was seborrheic dermatitis.
Wow.
And it's almost like the more stressed he got, the more it spread. And a lot of people notice in our YouTube videos that his face on some days is completely inflamed, and that's why. So, I was watching him just slowly deteriorate. He wasn't able to do PT with everyone and, go out and do the runs and the push-ups and everything.
Mm.
And I could see him suffering. And he told me basically, if you can make enough sales, if you can make this much money, I can't remember what the number was, but if you can make this much money on Etsy by the time my enlistment ends, which it was a 6-year enlistment, he said, we can go home. And to me, that was like this huge motivator because I miss my family. I'm like a mama's girl. I wanted to go back home with the people I knew. And my daughter at that point had never met her family. And by this time, she was almost 5 years old. So this was a huge motivator to me. And being able to save him, to help him, to get him out of this horrible situation where he had sacrificed all this time. Yeah. So, I worked nonstop to soak in as much education as I could. I went past Handmade Titan University and I read so many books. I took so many trainings. I tested so many different things in my Etsy shop until finally I had this really solid system and this raving fanatical fan base that every time I would release a collection, that collection would sell out. So right before we decided to move home, I had a Black Friday collection that launched like right before we went home. And during that collection, I believe in one day I made $4,000. It was almost, I think it was almost $5,000. And that was like the big cue that, okay, we did it. This is it. We can go home. We're safe. We can make it. So, and I feel like once we got home, things were really chaotic as well because adjusting from military life to civilian life is hard. You no longer have that security of being behind the barbed wire fence, I guess you could say. I was terrified, because on base, it's like we didn't even have to really lock our doors because we knew all of our neighbors. Yeah. So moving off base back home at the same time, it was really scary. So
back to living with the rest of us, huh?
Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh, I have to be a normal person now. No. And it was a really hard adjustment period. After that, my husband, he got a really cruddy job working for a tech support company where he could work from home, basically just answering phone calls for an internet service provider. But as you know, people, when you have to call to get your internet fixed, most people aren't in a very good mood. No, yes. And a lot of people were treating my husband with so much disrespect. Of course, they didn't know that he was an injured veteran, but it just, to me, it wasn't okay because I could see him getting more and more depressed. And I said to myself, okay, we can't do this anymore either. But when I realized, you know what, we're making enough money that you don't have to do this anymore. Like, you do not need to do this. You don't have to be that breadwinner anymore. We can do something else. Mm-hmm. So that was the real turning point where we said that Etsy is going to be our number one priority. And from that point, we decided that we wanted to share that with the world. Actually, we began making our YouTube videos before he quit his job. In fact, most of my videos that I recorded, it was out of boredom because he was down in the basement working. So that's where the turning point was, because I'd learned all this really cool stuff. And I wanted to share all the cool things that made what we did possible, going home, him being able to leave the military after his enlistment ended. I just learned so much, and I felt like there's not enough information out there for Etsy sellers. And some of these things that I felt, were hard to grasp, hard to attain, hard to find, like the psychology of the marketing. Those are all things that I wanted to spread to the world. And that's kind of how the Handmade Alphas were born. And now I believe we are up to almost 4,000 community members in our Facebook community. And if anybody wants to join that, it's totally free. It's just Handmade Alpha Facebook community. So that's where we kind of hang out and talk and discuss the trainings that Mark and I post on YouTube.
And I will definitely link to the Handmade Alphas Facebook group so that you can join if you want to. But it's easy enough to find. Just search Handmade Alphas.
I've got a Facebook page, Starla and the Handmade Alphas, where I post training updates, but you would be looking for the Handmade Alpha Facebook community to actually join that.
Okay. Oh my goodness. So much in there. First of all, how's your husband doing now?
He's okay. We have a couple problems like that that I don't think he'll ever outgrown. We actually covered this the Friday before last. We talked about PTSD when running a small business, as well as anxiety disorders when running a small business. So we're very open about these things because we feel like things like PTSD and anxiety and stress disorders are really pushed under the rug when it comes to business owners, when in reality, 45% of business owners experience some type of stress disorder or severe anxiety. And I just feel like it's not something that needs to be a secret. We can help each other. We don't have to pretend that we're all just totally fine and everything's perfect. We can help each other.
Yeah.
So that's but he's doing a lot better, obviously. It's just he had to do a lot, when he was in the military that I don't think will ever go away. Yeah. But at the same time, he's able to get away from it. So that's what matters.
Okay, that's good. Yes. And I know first of all, please thank him for his service.
Of course.
I know serving in the military is more than just serving. It takes, your life is dedicated to that. And sometimes there's a sacrifice that we regular citizens don't realize that goes beyond just someone going away to serve somewhere, but it takes a toll on your life personally as well. So I appreciate that.
Of course.
Now, can we talk about, I don't even know where to start. So why did you decide to take to YouTube versus blogging about what you were learning?
Well, I'll admit, I mean, as big as blogs still are, which a lot of people like to deny that. They say that, blogging, that's a thing of the past. But blogging is still alive and well. It's just it's a certain niche. Some certain people really prefer to read content and certain people like the visual content. And from what I had heard from members of, the Etsy community, I know that people really respond to seeing human faces. And some of the biggest influencers in the handmade community, like Timothy Adam from Handmadeology and who am I thinking? Jason Malinak from Etsypreneurship. Yeah. Those were the first faces of the YouTube Etsy community, but in recent years, they kind of disappeared. And I hated that because I loved them. I absolutely loved watching them. And it was almost like Renee Christine was the one that was left. And because Renee, Christine, and I had become such good friends, I thought, well, I want to do this too, because there's absolutely a gap in the marketplace for that human face that everyone's looking for. People want to feel like they've got a friend who can help them. And you can't do that with a blog. I just feel like people need to see that human interaction and the eyes. In fact, that's one of the big things that I talk about is I can't see without my glasses, but most of my viewers know that when I'm looking at my webcam, I'm looking over my glasses straight into my webcam because even though I can't see my webcam, I'm blind as a bat. I want to form that connection with them because I want them to know that I am focused on them. So I think that's the power of YouTube. And it was responded to like very well. Everyone really, really loved the whole YouTube video training side of things.
Yeah, I know I'm drawn to those. And it's interesting that you say that. So I have a coach that I'm working with for my business. And because I've always done the podcast, I think my voice is what people know, but not so much me visually. And this year he said, I want to challenge you to go live in Facebook, just in your Facebook group, if if it scares you, because I'm like, no, I don't want to go live. I talk, I don't do video. And so he was like, just do it for 15 minutes and try. And it wasn't as bad as I anticipated. I actually enjoy doing it. But you're so right in that it creates a different type of connection when people see you. And every time I go live, I'm scared to death. And I think I say it each time. I think people are probably will probably get tired of me saying, okay, I'm very afraid right now, but I'm live. I should just stop saying it. But what I like was I sent a newsletter to my mailing list, and right away, almost immediately, and I'm going to call you out, Cindy, because I really appreciate that you did this. Cindy, she runs an Etsy shop. It's called Nito Keen. She emailed and she goes, I think you should make this newsletter a story on Instagram. Just, like, and I wasn't sure. I just assumed stories were video. So I was like, oh man, make a video of myself reading out Instagram. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to step out and do that. I've just done the Facebook one. Let me try Instagram. And it worked out really well because people responded differently to seeing me talk about what I had written. And I would like to one day do an experiment and see what the difference was between, the people who read it versus the people who watched the videos, even though it's not possible because they're two completely different, programs or platforms. But all that to say that, yes, I feel like this year it's made a difference, going in front of a camera as opposed to just being behind the microphone and just the voice people hear. There's a different type of connection and it feels really human.
Right, because you're picking up on social cues. You can tell, when you're looking at a presenter, you can tell in their expression if they're excited, if they're angry. You can pick up on all of those things. And as human beings, we tend to mimic the emotions of those who are around us in most cases. So I think that that's a really important thing because you're allowing your community to know, okay, this is something that you should be, paying attention to because you can see the expression in my face. Yeah. I think that that's all very important. That's how humans know how to react to something, by picking up on the social cues of others. So absolutely, I highly recommend, even for the makers, that if you have a Facebook community or a YouTube channel, that you be social and you represent your brand, because eventually your personality, your brand personality, becomes part of your business, and people associate your personality, actually how you're talking and engaging to your fans, with your brand. And it becomes very powerful, more so than, a corporate company that just doesn't have a face. We are handmade because people are valuing us, the creators. So when you're public about who you are, people really, really respond to that.
Yeah. Now, speaking of brand, one of the things that you mentioned before was you started off selling artwork, but now you do the necklaces, but you never changed your name. Is there a reason that you kept Art by Starla Moore, even though your product line changed? And do you think that changing it might have helped, or it wouldn't have made a difference anyway?
Well, this is going to be so silly. Big confession here. The reason I didn't change my name, and I don't know if it's still like this, but I had like 200 Facebook likes. And for some reason, I thought that was such a big number when I was like 19 years old. I'm like, 2,000 people have liked to my page. And when you reach 200 likes, you could no longer change your Facebook page. So I had to make the decision. Do I want to change my business name and get a new Facebook page and risk losing my 200 fan following? Or do I just want to keep this terrible name that I don't like? So I decided at 19 years old, being as very immature as I was, that I was just going to keep the Art by Starla Moore name. And now, I used to be really upset because I wanted to call my business Art Unlocked. Like I was really set on that name for some reason when I was 19 years old. I thought that would be the coolest name ever. And I had all these plans of changing my name. And then when I found out I couldn't, I was like, well, I guess people will know me for my first name. Thankfully, it's unique.
Yeah.
But now I think it's okay. I'm okay with it now because everyone says, is that a Starla piece? And
right.
that makes me, that kind of, I don't know, maybe it's narcissistic, but I get like a little giggle out of it because people are calling them Starla keys. It makes me
Yeah.
excited. And I've actually been out in public, wearing one of my keys, and someone has asked, is that a Starla key? And I've actually said, yes, I'm Starla. Hi.
Oh my goodness.
So I've actually been called out in public. I think it was at a Starbucks by a Starbucks employee. It's
Oh.
weird. We've got over 25,000 Facebook followers right now. So that's why, looking back on it, that's why I'm like so embarrassed that 200 followers is what kept me from changing my business name.
Well, it works now, so
I'm okay with it now, but in the beginning, I was really mad at myself.
yeah. So speaking about just having a following and getting press and getting that publicity and getting to the point where somebody recognizes your piece and asks for it by name or asks about it by name, you've been showcased on ABC, NBC, Fox, CW, in newspapers like the Boston Globe, Sacramento Bee. That is something that is almost every Etsy seller's dream, is to have their work featured in a national publication. How did you do it?
That one, I can't take credit for. That was all Renee Christine from Handmade Titan University. She is such an amazing coach, and she actually teaches that to all of her sellers. When you join Handmade Titan University, which, like I said, it's closed. It won't be open again until 2019.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, she actually teaches her sellers exactly how to do that. And it's crazy. Once you start, it's like more and more publications pick you up. But I don't want to like spill her secrets, but I do want everyone to know that if anyone's like been skeptical about Handmade Titan University, like I'm not being paid to say this, or I'm not an affiliate or anything crazy like that. Well, I have been an affiliate in the past, but I'm not being paid right now to say that she truly does help sellers to reach this point where I am. So, it explodes. Once you get picked up by one publication, more publications get hungry to share that story. And it just kind of goes from there. But for those in the audience who want like a tip on getting publication or, recognition before they're able to take a bigger course like Handmade Titan University, I recommend reaching out to influencers within your niche. So finding a good influencer on YouTube or a blogger that fits in with your niche, and not asking them to feature you per se. I think that that's something that really turns bloggers off, because their job is to create content for their niche, not to help you with your business. But when you ask to collaborate in a project, for example, maybe you make, we'll say, cloth diapers, and you talk to a blogger who does just mom tips, ways for moms to make their life easier. You could contact that blogger and say, hi, my name's blah, 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 and I just released this really great collection of cloth diapers in my handmade business. Because I look up to you and idolize you so much, I wanted to know if you would like to collaborate on a project with me to influence, moms to be more eco-friendly. And we could go over, some ways to make your home eco-friendly, and making your own baby food and all, and then you could throw in cloth diapering. That way you're not just saying feature my products.
Right.
You're making it's cookies and milk rather than simply saying send your fans to buy my cookies. Like you're trying to make that blogger their niche kind of respond to your product, but disguise it in a way that it is more of an article that everyone can benefit from. So that's a really great way to gain some publicity without, actually saying, here, feature my stuff. Bloggers don't like that.
Yes. And actually, thank you for sharing that. That's a really good point, because I know recently people have been saying, well, bloggers aren't responding when, I try to connect with them or reach out to them. And you're right. It could be that they don't see anything in it for them, or they feel that it would just be a push to sell your product as opposed to a collaboration that's going to actually benefit their audience. And so coming from that angle seems like a much more, just a better way to go about it.
Right. It's more of an honest perspective of wanting to help their community. And when you show the interest in helping their community, they're more likely to respond to that. And another big mistake I see people making is they try to leverage like a gift, like, oh, I'll send you this, I'll send you that if you feature me. When in reality, that gift should be the incentive after they've already featured you. And what that gift does is, for one, it is a genuine thank you. So that person is going to say, wow, this creator really valued my help. And another thing that it does is it increases the odds that you'll get featured again, because then that influencer blogger might snap a picture of the gift and put it on Instagram and, to thank you publicly, or maybe they'll even decide to later do a product review of your product on their own time. You just don't want to ask for it. You want to send the gift, not expecting anything. And then if that blogger responds, and does that, then yay, perfect, awesome, be excited about it. But if they don't take it personally.
Yeah, good idea. So let's talk about Handmade Alphas. I know you've already mentioned it briefly, but who specifically is this community for? And is Facebook right now the only way we can get access to the community?
Well, the Handmade Alphas, obviously, it kind of starts with YouTube. A lot of our community members, they'll join the community not even aware that there's a YouTube channel that's attached to the community. My YouTube channel is just Starla Moore. And most of what's going on in the community is based on the trainings and live chats that we do on YouTube. So we kind of carry the conversation and tips over to the community so that everyone can kind of talk about their progress, if they have any questions, if they want to share their results from what we teach, which, holy cow, we have so many people who talk about how things have just blown up for them after they've, actually adjusted and tried some of the trainings that we've recommended. So I think that is a great place to start by joining the community. But later, after so much demand, so many people have told us that they want more. They say, man, I wish that there was just an alpha course, a full alpha course that would go over this stuff more in depth. Because I thought that the YouTube channel was enough, but apparently people aren't sick of me yet. So after a lot of people begged and pleaded, I decided to reach out to Renee Christine and say, hey, so a lot of my community asked me to make a course. Could you tell me how to go about doing that? Would you mind sharing with me? And she was just so helpful and open and was like, yeah, Starla, do it. I was afraid to ask her, but because my course is Etsy based and hers is about kind of dominating marketing in general, no matter where you sell, she was just so supportive of me going after this, new idea. And when I announced it to the Handmade Alphas, I was like, do you guys want me to create a course? Like, I was so nervous. I felt terrified to even ask because I thought that they would freak out and, say, oh, you're not creating free content anymore.
Yes.
I was terrified. But in reality, everyone was so supportive. Like, they wanted this, they asked for it. And we're still in development of it right now. We're hoping for a spring launch or an early summer launch. for the Handmade Alpha Academy. But the goal of the Handmade Alpha Academy, ultimately, I want to be able to create more free trainings for those who are just starting out on, who are just using YouTube, because that's where I started. I remember finding people like Timothy Adam and Renee Christine, and I didn't have the money to buy these premium courses that were out there that I really wanted to take.
Right.
All I could do was take the free content I could find, but that free content helped me so much that I was finally able to afford better education. And I want that for others, because honestly, I feel that seeking that education, and it doesn't need to be mine. I'm not just saying this because I'm creating one of those courses.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people all the time, I don't care what education you seek. You could do Handmade Titan University. You could, just go buy some psychology books. Do anything, but don't just sit there.
Yeah.
Because, I just feel like people who sit and wait and look at their stats every day and read the Etsy forums and, let's all do a like ladder where we all like each other's stuff. None of that works. And I know it doesn't work because I've been there. So I want to help people to be able to make enough money so they can seek the education of their choice, whether it be mine or someone else's, because I don't want anyone to have to go through what I've been through. I don't want anyone to have to worry about, am I going to be able to pay the bills? Am I going to, while my husband was in the military and I was pregnant and sleeping on an air mattress, because the military does not pay well. For anybody who's not aware, especially your first few years, military does not pay very well.
Yeah, I've heard. And, I want to say a couple of things. One of the things I feel bad about is not having given enough notice on the podcast before Handmade Titan University went live. This year, it was the day it went live. We did that podcast episode, released it, and Renee Christine keeps it open for just 10 days every year. And so with the podcast, I know people kind of listen a week or two at a time, or so they'll binge listen down the road, and so they might not have known. Next year, I will give you ample notice. I'm really happy that we have this runway for Starla's product, so that you can start to plan ahead. With education and learning how to sell on Etsy, there's a lot of stuff out there. There are a lot of programs out there, but sometimes you don't really know what you're getting. And Starla and I were talking beforehand, and I really feel comfortable with what she's working on. I haven't seen it, I don't know, but sometimes you just kind of get a feeling that what somebody's doing is going to be good, and I get that feeling now. So I will let you know when Handmade Alpha Academy is live so that you can go and check it out and see if it's what will help you. I buy courses all the time. Some are not good, some are, but you never know unless you actually try and educate yourself. And then you learn what you like and what you don't like, and so on and so forth. So I, for one, am excited about this coming up, because I know, especially with all the changes going on at Etsy, people are constantly trying to keep up and trying to learn what they need to be doing now, what's different, what's changed. And some of the places that we look for information and maybe inspiration might not give us what we're looking for. So I'm glad that you're working on this. Take your time, get it right, and then when it's ready, let us know.
Right, because there's so much that's going into it. We're not just teaching, do this and then do this because I said so. We want to actually go deeper into the psychology behind every decision that you should be making for your business, and break down what's literally going on inside both your brain, especially during the moments of fear, the moments of doubt, the moments where, I think Etsy sellers just get so confused about something or so terrified about something that they have a complete mental shutdown. Yeah. And when you actually know what's going on in your brain on that, neurological level, I think that I think that it helps you to get past those hurdles because you know exactly why it's happening. And you can say, okay, brain, just shut up. You're being silly. We're not listening to you today. I'm calling the shots today, and we're going to move forward. And not only that, we're also going to cover what's happening in your shopper's brain and the psychological triggers that as sellers, we can kind of leverage and use to make sure that we're helping these shoppers to make that buying decision.
Yeah.
So I think that it's going to be a lot more than any other Etsy themed courses right now have.
Okay.
Not trying to toot my own horn, but I'm going based on what our community wants, and they've been very, very vocal about what they want. So every day I'm like writing down a new idea. Okay, this person asked for this, and this person asked for this. So we're just kind of going down the checklist of our 4,000 community members and developing exactly what they want.
And then realistically, what type of time commitment is somebody who invests in this looking at putting into really following through and getting things done? What's a realistic timetable one can give themselves so that they don't, one, feel like they're falling behind, or two, get overwhelmed and just not follow through?
So for the academy, it's really going to be self-paced. Everything's good. Like right when you enroll, you're going to be in, and you can work at whatever pace you want to. So for some, it's going to take more time to decide on things like branding and, the smaller aspects of business. But for some other business owners, you might already have that done. So, you can kind of just, I still recommend watching it because a lot of people say, I've got my branding down, and I look at their branding and I think, ooh, you should probably work on it just a little bit. So, but I think ideally it's going to take probably about 60 days to actually get through and not just watch everything, but execute the changes. But from there, we already have a massive list of ideas that we're going to continuously grow this course. So rather than, okay, you're in and now I'm going to try to sell you more later, once you're in for life, and you get everything that I develop after that. If I decide that, okay, well, I want to add a training about this, this, and this, or, oh, Etsy just changed their SEO again.
Yes.
I'm not going to say, okay, now you guys have to pay again for the new SEO, strategy. That will all be included forever and ever and ever. So you never have to pay again to get the new content. It's just going to be included into the course as we go. So it's always going to be growing. In fact, I want to take the same business model as I learned from Renee Christine, because I've been a member of Handmade Titan University since 2015. And she'll add a bonus in there or a new training, even to this day. And I can go back and watch that. And I've always loved that. She's so open and transparent, and she's so generous, and I want to have that same mindset because I'm not out. I really don't want to try to sit on a golden throne over the Etsy community. What I want is to genuinely help sellers and keep sellers from getting looped into these crazy things like, oh, you need to pay an SEO specialist every time you launch a new collection to do your SEO for you. I hate that. I hate that. And anytime a seller asks me, should I be paying for this and this and this every time I launch a new collection? You don't have to do that. Learning how to do it yourself will help you for a lifetime.
Yeah, I agree. So, and this might be something that you cover in Handmade Alpha Academy, so we don't have to go into too much detail if this is something we'll learn there. But I like how you've used YouTube to grow your brand. Is this something that you advise sellers to do in general as part of their marketing strategy? And do you think it's something that will work for an Etsy shop? Maybe not necessarily somebody who's trying to grow a community that they're educating, but somebody who's trying to get their customers to recognize and be familiar with their brand. How would you advise that person to incorporate YouTube as part of their marketing strategy?
Well, I think it really depends on the niche and the type of audience that you're trying to sell to. Because I think that with some businesses, it might not work.
Okay.
For others, it might work really well. It really depends on your personality and your comfort level. Because in order to succeed on YouTube, you really, really do have to have a personality to
Hmm.
represent that brand. You have to have the voice. You know, it doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter if you have makeup on that day. I think that's what most people get hung up on because
Yeah.
they're nervous to show their face. But the face is nothing. It's showing that you're comfortable and showing that you really, really believe in the product that you're trying to sell. So as long as you can actually give value to the online community and give them a reason to watch and pay attention, you can absolutely leverage YouTube, not just to find fans, but to actually feed the fans that you already have so that they know who you are, they like you as a person, and people tend to follow the brands that they believe in. I think that every brand needs to not only sell a product, but they need to have a really strong message behind the product that they're selling, because ultimately you shouldn't just be selling products. You should be selling a solution to a problem,
Yes. Yes.
and that there should be a moral or a value or an ethic behind what you're selling. And when you get on board with people's deeply rooted morals and ethics, you're more able to, you know, be a successful seller, because you're showing that your product actually is catered to what they need, rather than you just saying, I'm going to sell this because I need to make a car payment. You know,
Yeah.
I've always kind of cringed when I see sellers who will hop online and actually make posts like, "Oh, my rent's due and I don't have any money. I'm running a flash sale." Like, I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been to that point where I had a bill due and I did need to make that sale, but at the same time, you have to be the cheerful personality where you're saying, "I want to solve my customers' problems," rather than trying to get your customers to solve your problems.
Yeah.
So, being that really friendly figure is extremely important, and YouTube is a great way to leverage that.
What do you think are some of the mistakes? And this is kind of a two-part question. Some of the most common mistakes that Etsy sellers are making right now. And well, in general, when it just comes to running their Etsy shops or their businesses. And alternatively, I forgot the second part of my question, but let's talk about the most common mistakes that people are making now.
Okay, so mistake number one, like the biggest mistake that I see in Etsy shops is not paying enough attention to your photos. When you're taking your photos and you're, just snapping them with your cell phone and it looks blurry, or you can see some crud in the background, or you're taking a photo of your product, over your bed sheet, on your bed, and the blankets are all wrinkled up, and I see this all the time. And the thing is, when you're doing that, even if you have a great product, like your product could be a solid gold ring with a beautiful diamond in it. It doesn't matter the quality of the product. If your photos are cruddy, people will perceive the product itself as being cruddy. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's just kind of how we perceive things. You're
Mm-hmm.
framing it in a light that doesn't showcase the quality. So people pay a lot more attention to photos and presentation than they do the actual quality of that product. So I think that that is definitely the number one mistake. And because of that, I actually created a training series on my YouTube channel called it's my iPicky training series. And iPicky is actually a free website that is comparable to Photoshop. And I created this training because I know a lot of people say that I can't do great photos. I can't take great photos because I can't afford Photoshop. When in reality, there's a website out there that's totally free that I do all of my photo editing on. If you see a photo from me online anywhere, I did it in iPicky.com. I do not own Photoshop. So I wanted to share that with the world.
Oh, wow. Okay. I will find that video and link to it in the show notes for this episode. And speaking of training series, you did a very comprehensive one on Etsy Rank as well.
Yes, I did. Anthony and Wolf and I from Etsy Rank, we talk a whole lot. Like
Yeah.
anytime there's some type of tool that my alphas recommend, because Anthony is so open and transparent, and I've just always gotten the feeling that he really wants to help his community.
Yeah.
Just from the moment that I started kind of talking to him and studying the way that he engages with his community, I just really was. He's got such a magnetic personality. I couldn't ignore it. And I reached out to him and I said, hey, you've got some really great tools on your site, but my fans have been talking about needing a tool that does this. Is this something that maybe there would be any way to add this to your site? And within like a day, he messages me and he's like, okay, it's active. Let me know what you think. Test it for me.
Wow.
And the way that he responds to the needs of his community, oh man, I absolutely love Etsy Rank. And that's why I decided to do training series on it. In fact, a lot of people think that there's like some type of affiliate program going on between the two of us, but there absolutely isn't. It's the tool I use. And it's the tool that the alphas have told me that they prefer. So that's the one that I like to cover the most.
Yes, I think I first found out about it sometime towards the end of last year. It was another guest on the podcast who was like, Etsy Rank is it. And I was like, Etsy what? So then I checked it out, I signed up, and then I started looking for tutorials on it. And then I found yours, and I haven't finished going through everything yet, but there's so much in there that the tool does, and a lot of it for free, which is just amazing, because I'm like, how is he doing this? But it's a really good tool. I haven't explored it in depth, but I know you have, because I've seen some of the videos that you've done, and I'm going to link to those as well, because I think that they're very helpful for learning how to use Etsy Rank and learning about what it does. And one day I should have Anthony come on too, just to talk about it, because I know it's a new tool that people are thoroughly enjoying.
Yeah, Anthony, I'm sure that he would be totally game to do a podcast. In fact, when I approached him about doing a live session for our Friday Q&A, he was so thrilled. And I said, well, what time do you want to cut this off? Because if we don't put a time cap on it, it could last forever. And he's like, well, whenever the questions stop. And I said, okay, well, you said it, not me. And it ended up lasting for 2 hours, which is still live on my channel. If anybody, wants to go look for that. He just dove so deep into some of the questions that our community asked. So I'm sure that he would be totally open to doing so with you guys.
So great. Okay, so I'll do that.
Awesome.
Starla, do you have any specific tips or advice for that seller who's listening now and is just struggling to grow? It's just struggling to get to that next level, or even just to break through. What would you tell that person?
Well, I always tell my sellers that a shark that isn't moving forward will die. A shark has to be propelled forward in order for it to live and breathe. So when you're stalling, when you're sitting there waiting and just hoping that something's going to happen, that the right person is going to find your shop and spread the word, or when you're in the Etsy forums doing the ladders and the light games and all of that, none of that is actually feeding your growth and education. You're just hanging out with other sellers who also don't know what works. And, sellers who have the time to play those games, when in reality, the sellers that you should be listening to and the influences on the Etsy community that give the best advice because they've been there, they don't have the time to be playing around in the Etsy forums and bickering about what works and doesn't work. So my advice is to find education wherever you can. Just make sure that you're always moving forward. Find an influence that you can trust. Even if it's not me, find someone like Renee Christine. I'm sure that there are a bunch of other new Etsy, influencers out there in the community that I just haven't had time to dive deeper into, but there are a lot of them. So take time to learn from someone who is already where you want to be, and make sure that you can validate that they are already where you want to be. Anybody can make a YouTube channel and give Etsy tips. It doesn't mean that they're successful on Etsy, So I think that is one of the key things that people should be doing. And another big tip that I have for my community is that I always tell them, stop reading marketing books that were written by rich guys who want to get richer. Instead, start reading psychology books, because, what worked for that rich guy might not work for you. However, with a psychology book, things are very cut and dry. There isn't, though we all respond differently to things as humans, there are a lot of basic human triggers that we all instinctively respond to. So when you read a psychology book as opposed to a marketing book, you can take this kind of abstract concept and, write the concept down on paper and think of all the ways that you can apply that concept to your handmade business when you're communicating with customers and positioning yourself, in the marketplace.
I completely agree with you on that, because yesterday I bought some books to read, and none of them were actually about how to sell on Etsy, but they were, excuse me, about the psychology of how to treat customers and how to treat the people that you serve. And I liked that because I felt like, okay, this goes deeper than how do I sell a product on Etsy or how do I sell to an Etsy audience? But it was more about, what am I here to do for other people, and how do I do that? I don't know how to explain it, but now that you say psychology books, it makes sense to me I feel like that's kind of what they were. But do you have any specific book recommendations?
Absolutely. I have two major books that I recommend to all of my Handmade Alphas. And I think that this is where everyone should start when they decide that they're going to make that reading list. I would read every second of the day if I could. I have so many psychology books upstairs that I haven't gotten to yet. But the very first book that everyone should read, especially if you find yourself struggling when Etsy makes a change, or, they change the algorithm and the rug gets pulled out from under you and you just feel like the world is against you. This book will only take you about an hour to read. And it is one of the books that Renee Christine recommended to me. It's called Who Moved My Cheese?
Oh, yeah.
It's very short. It's so short. It will literally only take an hour to read, but that hour will change your life. And you will find yourself in times when you're just so stressed out and depressed and you don't know what to do, you'll pick up that book and you'll read it again. And it will serve as that reminder. And the book is super silly. It's about little people and little mice, and they live in a tiny maze, and someone keeps moving their food source, their cheese. Someone keeps taking it from them. And it's so cute and at the same time so inspiring. So even if you're not a handmade seller, I think that's a book that everyone should read.
Right. Yeah.
And then the second book that I recommend, above all other psychology books that I've read so far, is Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely. And this book is another one that Renee Christine recommends, but this one really breaks down the thought process behind the totally irrational things that we do every day, just the crazy things that we respond to when we're aware that we're doing it, but we do it anyways. But this book also goes over some of those really slick, psychological marketing tactics that anyone can replicate and use for their own handmade business. And it's not, a lot of people, they say, oh, well, that's manipulative. And it's not manipulative. you're just feeding natural human instincts, the same as every single successful business does. So
I love that. I love Who Moved My Cheese. I haven't heard of Predictably Irrational, but I will go and look for that one. And I will also link to those. I'll put the titles in the show notes for this episode. So if you can't write right now, just go to convome.com and it will be there. You'll see all these. Oh, wow. Starla, thank you so much. You've been so helpful, a breath of fresh air. I've loved learning more about what you're doing and what you have coming down the pike. And what's the best way people can connect with you if they want to know more and just get connected with you after listening to this?
Well, I think that, obviously following me on YouTube and joining the Handmade Alpha Facebook community is a good start. But right now we actually do have a landing page set up for Handmade Alpha Academy. That is at handmadealphaacademy.com. Man, I'm weighing you down with a lot of links, aren't I?
Oh, no, I'm getting them all. Keep going.
But at handmadealphaacademy.com, you can actually sign up for the email list for the Handmade Alphas. And this is where we constantly email our subscribers when we have a new video up or when we're going to do a Q&A. I always message the morning before the Q&A. That way everyone knows what time that we'll be live. And I think that it all just kind of connects from there, because once you join the Handmade Alpha VIP list via email, first of all, you get my free ebook, which covers exactly how I was able to get 25,000 fans on Facebook. So that's like automatic freebie right when you join.
Nice.
But then from there, if you were to come to one of the YouTube videos, during the YouTube videos, I always plug in all of the other things like the Handmade Alpha Facebook community and anything new that we're doing. I always plug those into the emails. So I think that the email list might be a good place to start. Not to mention, if you ever have an Etsy question, you can always reply to any of the emails that I send to you, and either myself or my husband, Mark, will personally respond to you. It might take a few days because we get a lot of them, but we always personally respond to our emails.
Perfect. Okay, I have all this down. I will have links to everywhere online you can find Starla. And one we didn't even mention, which I'm also going to link to, is your artbystarlamore.net. People can just go and learn more about you there. And you have, is that like the home of your home off of Etsy?
Kind of, that website, I'm actually redesigning it. It's a little bit messy right now, but basically what that website will do, if you click, shop now, it will redirect you to my Etsy page. So I don't necessarily sell on that website just yet. It's simply a redirect to my Etsy shop.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I will have all the links that you have given us so that people can easily find you. Starla, thank you so much again for coming on the podcast. I really do appreciate you taking the time to come and talk with us. I look forward to what you're going to do in the future. I'm so glad that we got to connect, and I hope that you will come back again and talk to us maybe in a year from now, because I feel like things will be so different then and we'll be having a completely different conversation too.
Of course, anytime. I had a blast.
Oh, good. Thank you. And I thank you for listening to the podcast. I will be back next week.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review too. Visit convome.com to leave a comment or feedback on this episode.